Hello Anglophones and English-speaking Francophiles of all stripes. My name is Cobalt Tolbert, and I don't know if you've noticed this, but France has some, problems. France has recently seen increasing instances of racism and Islamophobia, suppression of workers' rights and social movements, inadequate and regressive responses to the climate crisis, increased austerity and cuts to social spending amidst rising poverty and inequality, silly leadership during the pandemic, etc. Good thing none of that's a problem anywhere else that I can think of, which is why we must support Anasse Kazib for the French presidential election, whose candidacy is best positioned to create a truly decisive break from politics as usual and the increasing rise of the far right. But I'm not French. How can I help? Great question. I'm getting there. But first, Anasse Kazib is a railway worker and first-gen Moroccan immigrant who came to prominence as a leader during the pension reform strikes, supporting the plight of workers and pushing for a more militant strategy while facing constant racist attacks over his origins, which have not abated a single moment since. Developing a much-needed revolutionary socialist perspective with the organization that put him forward, Révolution Permanente. Don't worry, RP works fine. He has since assembled a determined block of activists, trade unionists, students, etc., and put together a 60-page program that elucidates not just his proposed policies, but also a radical perspective on the issues that we face today, that seeks to do away with the foundations of exploitation and oppression not just in France, but in the interests of the working class the world over. But Cobalt, there are so many other candidates. Why should I choose the fine fellow which you speak? Whereas the other leftist candidates have steadily accommodated the status quo, Kazib and RP have deep roots in the major social movements, between the anti-racist organizations that responded internationally to the George Floyd uprisings, such as Committee for Anasse, the trade unions, the Yellow Vests, the LGBTQIA+ struggle, the Me Too movement. This party was born directly out of the renewed resistance that found expression under current President Macron's administration, and it represents a clear antidote, a program, and a strategy to win. The Kazib program contains several notable measures, such as raising the minimum wage to 1,800 euros a month, guaranteeing employment for all, and finally closing the gender pay gap, fixing the price of basic goods, free public transportation, universal telephone and internet access, capping all rents and lowering them according to popular demand, renovating all housing on an eco and worker-friendly basis, and putting all empty housing to public use, raising the pension fund and lowering the retirement age according to the intensity of each particular job, nationalization and democratization of strategic industries, the financial sector, and especially the pharmaceutical industry in light of the pandemic, renationalizing healthcare, education, and all social services to be put under the control of the workers, opening all corporate accounts to public scrutiny to put an end to tax evasion and fraud by the super rich, and a progressive tax regime including a 100% tax rate for all income above 260 million euros. And if all these economic proposals weren't enough, RP has also put forward a worker-led climate strategy, expansion of education services and tenuring all professors, accountability for all the families of victims of police brutality, demilitarization of the police, immediate dissolution of all special armed forces, and an end to the reactionary global security laws, repeal of all Islamophobic laws, and unwavering denunciation of all forms of racism and bigotry, opening the borders, closing all detention centers, ending all deportations, and full rights and citizenship to all immigrants and refugees, documented or otherwise. A real plan and mass education campaign for doing away with all violence against women, including more allocation of funds and resources for survivors, self-determination, depathologization, and sexual liberation for all LGBTQIA peoples, as well as universal access to all sexual health goods and services, capping politician pay at an average income and making all elected officials instantly recallable by simple vote, self-determination for all peoples dominated and colonized by the French state, as well as full support for the cause of Palestinian liberation, working toward a united socialist states of Europe to be led by the workers of every country, all for a government of the exploited and oppressed, of the workers and the masses in rupture against capitalism. Now why am I, an American, talking to you, other Americans, and other English-speaking peoples? Well, first off, because a movement that fights for all workers should gain support from all workers, and secondly, because this campaign, really needs your help. The French electoral system, while admittedly far better than the American one, retains some deeply anti-democratic obstacles to small candidates like Kazib. In order to be able to present themselves on the national stage, every candidate needs to gain 500 signatures of sponsorship from mayors and other elected government officials, many of whom are under political pressure by financial interests and the ruling parties. This clearly disenfranchises those who lack corporate donors and media support. So the activists of RP have been scrambling for months now to convince every single mayor in every single small village to sponsor this candidate. These are students and workers who've given their weeks and weekends to get enough signatures. At this point, they have gained half the requisite sponsors, but they need to close that gap, and fast. So if you're living in France as an expat, if you're studying here, if you're visiting on vacation, or if you're just interested from afar in the well-being of all exploited and oppressed persons, invest yourself in this fight. So, Here's what you can do. 1. There's an absolute media blackout that's shrouding this campaign, so feel free to share this and other content and articles in order to raise awareness. Links below. 2. Otherwise, right now, what's most important is the campaign to get to 500 signatures. So if you're living in France yourself, offer to drive or lend a car. 3. If there's a chapter of RP near you, reach out and join it. Or start your own group in your town or workplace or school and poster around and distribute leaflets. 4. You can also ask Anasse Kazib to come to a public meeting in your area in order to stir up local support. 5. And if you can't help in any other way,
I am once again asking for your financial support.
That helps us pay for gas and materials as we search for sponsorships. I know that to the English-speaking world, France is a magical place of fine architecture, famous philosophers, sexy mustaches,
pastries and turtlenecks!
But if we really admire and care about this place, we should support the workers who wake up every day to make it run. The immigrants seeking a better life who are being met with increased hostility. The students and young people who are realizing what little future there is for them under the current system. And all colonized peoples face to face with the violence of the French Republic and the other imperialist powers. Révolution Permanente and the Anasse Kazib campaign have offered a path out of all of this, towards a better world, but we can only get there if we march together. Be sure to follow the campaign and RP on social media. Pro tip, you can translate most of their posts into English if needed, and Chrome can translate websites for you using Google. And check the links here and in the description. For more English language content about the campaign, Left Voice is the US-based sister organization of RP. You can follow them and read their articles here and in the links below.